This is an off-the-cuff video. I'm using it to waste battery power. Let's get comfortable. Tonight it's not insanely cold. It's not kind of special. No, I don't love you. I'm curious if anybody out there knows of any websites with plans to take pallets and make a building out of it. Because I've been looking and I haven't found anybody who does anything other than, yes, this is going to be a rant, art designs for college. Oh look, we can do sustainability and help the disadvantaged. Housing hobos never comes up. They talk about, oh, it's a cute little tiny house and it only costs you $80,000 to build it, or some other crazy number like that. The point to low-income housing is it's supposed to be cheaper than the other stuff. If you can't outdo me putting up a van by the river, you have failed in providing cheap housing. If anybody knows of any plans, it's great. I've run through a bunch of them in my head. Depends on the pallets you find. So this video is going to be me just rambling for a minute. And I'm going to have to do a video on this subject because I can't find anybody to do it. Here we go. Pallet designs and terminology. I'm not going to do the terminology. There's an amazing amount of technical information about pallets because they're used for shipping internationally. They come up with standards and sizes. There are several basic sizes. The most common one you see is designed to set them next to each other, side by side, for a distance of 10 feet, and they're approximately 4 feet long. That's it. 3 across is 10 feet, so that's exactly 10 feet, and one length is 4 feet. And if you do 3 next to each other here and 3 next to each other here, you get a 10 by 8 foot space. And if you were to take pallets, which are based on a 2x4 and a thin layer on the edge, if you stood them up as walls, you'd lose almost about a foot, which would make a little bit under 7 foot by 10 foot space, which is exactly the minimum sized room you can have in a building legally. In many areas, the safe number is approximately, it's actually 70 feet square, which is a 10 foot by 7 foot space. But anyway, the reason for the size is obviously so they can pack them into a storage area or into a pallet, shipping container, ship, truck, whatever. There are several different sizes. One of them is suspiciously the same size as the minimum size for a wall, which is 7 feet tall. It's basically a double-sized pallet. I haven't actually sat down and measured it because I'm lazy. I also lost my tape measure somewhere. I actually had a tape measure. I lost the thing. So I'll have to get another one. It's literally $2 at the store. I'm just lazy. But anyway. How to make a pallet house. Now this is going to be a spoken word photography because I'm going to try to draw a picture in your head, and all I got is crayons and I'm throwing mashed potatoes in the wall because basically I'm an idiot. But here we go. There are 3 balloon naughty confirmed. There are 3 pieces of 2x4 that are on edge, 2 on the outside, 1 in the middle. And if they're on a chunk of wood that is 1/3 of 10 feet or 3 feet and 4 inches, this is halfway in the middle, so that's, okay, half of 3 feet is 1.5 feet, plus 2 inches at this point, that's 20 inches? Anyway, on center. That's not 16 inch on center, obviously, like you have on a wall. How do we make a wall out of it? Well, we ignore the standards for building a building and find out that that spacing is almost exactly the spacing for, coincidental, warehouses. They have that kind of spacing in the walls. There is a size of insulation for the wall that does fit into about a 20 inch space or 19 inch space. It's very close to it. It's not exactly right, but it's pretty close. So we could use that. We can stick a layer of, insulation in that chunk of wood. And if it's an 8 foot long version of a pallet, which would make it a 2-to-1 ratio, 4 foot wide, or not 4 foot, but 8 foot long and 3.3 foot wide. No, it's got to be wider than that. I'm assuming it's at least a 4 foot wide, but I don't know. I have, again, no measuring. I didn't measure it. I'm an idiot. Okay, so how do we assemble these into a wall? Well, if we have one that's a wall height, let's say it's 7 feet tall minimum, that's our wall. So how do we attach them to each other? Now, if it's these long skinny ones, what you do, this is the process, is here's your square for the building you're making. Let's assume you did this. And let's assume you made a floor by literally laying these down next to each other. Let's say for fun that you're going to do a 10-foot by 8-foot floor minimum, so you made at least 3 of them wide and they're 8 foot across, so you got that number done. Okay. How do you join them to each other? Well, first of all, you have to make a flat surface to work on, but let's assume it's a cement pad or whatever. You found a hunk of dirt that's flat somewhere on this planet. Flat Earth joke. So anyway, how do you attach them to each other? Now, this is what I've actually done in the past, but I don't know if it will work. On a completely flat cement surface, when we needed to make a subfloor, didn't have to have insulation in it, but you would put it in. We put them next to each other so that we had the three boards that you see when you look at a pallet end on, like this. These two here are pressed next to each other like this, and they have the boards on top. We went between the slats, or decking boards, and put a screw in at an angle, which tightened them into each other. We had to do 2 of them so that one didn't pull up more than the other. We crank them down in pairs between each end, and then a couple in the middle, and that held them together. And, well, what if you need to make a wall? Well, again, if they're wall length, you just make a floor and then tip it up. I mean, it's really not much more complicated. If they're the short ones that are 4 feet long and 3.5 or 3 1/3 feet wide, you have a problem, because you don't want the end of them all lining up. If they're all the same length like this, they come to an end like this, that's a snapping point. So what you do is you set a set of them down, 2 of them, these are the squarish ones on here, and you take the same thing and put it in the middle, but you slide it down out of the way and cut one of them this way, and take a piece of it, put it up on top, chunk it in place, and you put the screws in offset. This is actually what we did. Now, what that meant was that the crack between what would be the walls top and bottom was on this side and on this side, but in the middle there was a crack above and below that, so that they would actually kind of hang on to each other. You had to make sure you put the screws in pretty tight. You had to do it around the crack point, and you could make a wall that way. And when we built these things, I mean, they look like chicken coops when you're building them. To fill them in, because you fill in the slats, we would take pieces of wood and run them on a rip saw. Basically, it's just a table saw or just an ordinary skill saw that you can, push along a board, mount it. We would run through busted off pallet pieces and run through decking boards and slice them to where they would fit between them. And we didn't line them up on the pallet like you would think. We would put them offset to the halfway point so they would stick out and go onto the next pallet, because over half the time, it lined up with another slot. And then we would nail them in, and that would lock them together, and we could nail them in right at the point where the 2 pellets go like that. Now, me explaining it this way is really crap, so I'll include some images below in the description in the image or whatever. Now, why am I doing this video? Number one, doing this made really good stage or floor. You could find there's a way of building a foundation for a building where you have raised cement walls in a ring where you put your walls up, and you have a floor that's sunk and it's made out of cement as well, and you usually put a drain at the bottom. It looks like a really big sink, but you make it that depth so you can drop in the 2x4s or whatever size you're using for your I forgot what they call them again, for the floorboards, the thing the floorboards sit up on. I'm sorry, my brain doesn't work right now. And that would allow you to have a nice flat floor at cement level, and then you'd have mounting points on the cement for your walls. And that made it to where you could make a shop. And you could also, yank up the pallets. We would just use pallets. Just throw them in, don't even link them to each other. And you could put insulation in them or not. And if there was ever a leak, it would drain to the bottom and go down the drain. It's a pretty simple method. And you'd prop them up by putting in little bricks or whatever. Or have ridges where you would actually have the pallets go. That was actually a design decision, some of these designs. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is It's really easy. I mean, if you go look at some videos, you can learn how to level out a hunk of dirt, fill it with gravel, pour some cement, and then, you know, mold the shape to where it'll do these things. I've done it. I was instructed how to do it. Can't remember for the life of me how to instruct anybody else to do it. As you can tell, I'm not good at giving instructions. But picture's worth 1,000 words or 1,000 years, and I will try to include them below in the description at a link to an image set so you can look at my really terrible renderings in a video game engine. But the point is, this was a way to make a wall, and it worked, and a way to make a floor, and worked. To make a roof, this is much more difficult. You have to make sure that it overlaps and is exactly 1 pallet wider and 1 pallet longer than your design for the floor. If you make it based on pallets, you want to do that because that means the pallet will stick out 1 pallet extra or half a pallet on each end of the building, and on the sides you get this neat effect where that center runner is actually on the edge of the building and it sits there, and then you can just put nails or screws in it at an angle and put it in, and you end up with walls that are really easy to attach tarp or actually put siding on, and a roof will work the same way. You have to tilt the roof, so you build it up, and there's a way of doing that as well. You can even make it to where it comes up like that, you know. But the trouble is, I can't find any of the pages I used to be able to find telling you how to do this. Almost like a bunch of people don't want it to be available. I've tried finding stuff, and I find people talking, oh, this is an art project for college. Isn't it neat? It only cost you $10,000 to build a shed. Dear college students, stop driving up prices before. Every time you drive up the cost of something, you get punished by having to pay for it later. You won't be able to pay it either. I'll see you camping next to me. Don't do that. Don't design your own world to be too expensive for you to survive in. Most of you have to pay back loans or will have literally burger flipping jobs and be miserable. Please learn, you idiots. I'm sorry, but this is turning into something of a rant because most of the pages talking about affordable housing show you how to build really cheap solutions for $100,000 per person. No, I'm not kidding. What kind of crap is that? You know what low-income housing is in the United States? It's a tent. Or you forbid them from having a tent and you punish them for being homeless and then wonder why they're really, really pissed off. I'm not furious. I'm kind of stuck. Oh, and then you create a credit-based system where if you haven't been inside or if you have medical bills or whatever, you can be denied housing and employment so that you can never get out from under for no good reason. You don't even do that to people who are illegal aliens getting a job in town. And the only kind of job you can get if you're in that kind of position, you get exploited and you don't get paid minimum wage. It's just kind of infuriating. And then you get homeowners associations and Portland Business Alliance deciding that you need to be their whipping boy. It gets old after a while. I'm kind of bitching right now, but it is. I know. And then when I go look on the net, I can't find these designs. There was hundreds of websites telling you how to do this. Do I actually have to be the person who makes the video on how to do this? Because I'm old and tired and I don't want to. I just want to be able to find a design and implement it. So tomorrow I'm going to go out and buy a tape measure and do a video designing this because I spent all day trying to find a design. So we'll call this step 0, the really bad intro. Because my role is, if I have to solve a problem because no one can solve it for me, I will solve it for as many people as I can to screw over the people who caused the problem in the first frickin' place. Have at thee. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.